There we go. All right. Thank you folks for joining us. My name's David Mitchell. I'm brand new. Obviously, you all have met me once or twice over the over the internet, and I'm looking forward to meeting you all in person. But today we're here to talk about network organizational development application strategies. And before we jump into the conversation, we just want to set the context with a couple of foundational slides. The first of which, Chad, you can go ahead and move on, is how to use Zoom. If you haven't learned over the pandemic how to use Zoom, well, here's a little bit of a reminder. The most important features for us today, of course, will be the mute button. We're asking that everybody stay on mute until you are called upon to speak. Our presentation will be quick, and there will be a question and answer period afterwards. And so, we'll just click of a button, you can unmute yourself and ask away all the questions that you might have. Of course, moving down the line, all the different various icons, I'm sure this group is familiar with, but you can stop and start your video. You can also contribute questions if you have a burning questions in the chat section. And we will do our best to respond during that question and answer period. We also would want to encourage everybody to raise their hands so that we are equitable in our responses and our questions. Chad, I think we can move on to the next slide. All right, and so Maryland State Arts Council has a land acknowledgement. This land acknowledgement statement derives from the Maryland State Arts Council Land Acknowledgement Project, in which Maryland State Arts Council staff consulted with tribal peoples whose lands are claimed by the state of Maryland. You can visit Maryland State Arts Council.org for more information, including maps, tribal histories, key concepts, and best practices for making and delivering land acknowledgements. And our land acknowledgement goes as follows. We acknowledge the lands and waters known as Maryland are the home of its first peoples, the excuse me. Help me out, Chad.
You got it.
Iconic Indian tribe, Assateague Peoples Tribe, Cedarville Band of Piscataway Indians, Choctaw Band of Indians, Lenape Tribe, Nanticoke Tribe, Nasi Wawash Band of Indians, Piscataway Kanoe Tribe, Piscataway Indian Nation, Pocomoke Indian Nation, Susquehannock Indians, Youghiogheny River Band of Swanee, and tribes in the Chesapeake watershed who have seemingly vanished since the coming of colonialism. We acknowledge that this land is now home to other tribal peoples living here in diaspora. We acknowledge the forced removal of many from the lands and waterways that nurtured them as kin. We acknowledge the degradation that continues to be wrought on the land and waters in pursuit of resources. We acknowledge the right of the land and waterways to heal so that they can continue to provide food and medicine for all. We acknowledge that it is our collective obligation to pursue policies and practices that respect the land and waters so that our reciprocal relationship with them can be fully restored. All right, and we can move on. To our equity and justice statement, we share the following information to ground today's work. The arts celebrate our state's diversity, connect our shared humanity, and transform individuals and communities. The Maryland State Arts Council, MSAC, and its supporting collaborators are committed to advancing and modeling equity, diversity, accessibility, and inclusion in all aspects of our organizations and across communities of our state. MSAC and its grantees are committed to embracing equity and non-discrimination regardless of race, religious creed, color, age, gender, expression, sexual orientation, class, language, and/or ability. Next slide. Our vision. The Maryland State Arts Council plays an essential role ensuring every person has access to the transformative power of the arts. Our mission. The Maryland State Arts Council advances the arts in our state by providing leadership that champions creative expression, diverse programming, equitable access, lifelong learning, and the arts as a celebrated contributor to the quality of life for all the people of Maryland. Next slide. So in 2019, Maryland State Arts Council adopted a strategic plan that includes the following goals. Please, we'll review. Goal 1, increase participation, broaden MSAC's constituency, providing avenues designed to increase pathways to engagement. Goal 2, provide intentional support, embrace thoughtful and targeted approaches to serving known and yet to be known MSAC constituents. Goal 3, build capacity, work strategically to further build organizational and governance capacity to ensure that MSAC is capable of vigorously delivering on its mission. Goal 4, leverage connections, further enhance current relationships and involve additional partners, collaborators, and constituents who will benefit from and advance the work of MSAC. Goal 5, bolster Maryland arts. Showcase the high caliber, diverse, and relevant work of Maryland's artists and arts organizations, their contributions to community vitality, and MSAC's role as a catalyst. On. Transparency and collaboration are guiding values of the Maryland State Arts Council. In the spirit of those values, the staff and planning collaborators have developed this list of actions to guide our creative meetings. And since our group is so small, today at least, I would like us to all just jump in and read one of these creative meeting actions. I'll start first. Celebrate being in the space with other creative people. Anybody can jump in.
Engage with everyone's presence as a gift.
Acknowledge that together we know a lot.
Enter the conversation with curiosity and inquiry.
Right. Share your idea and trust that it will be heard.
Use I statements.
Focus your language on the task at hand.
Hold one another accountable with care. Apply yes, and I hear your idea and I'm going to add to it.
Balance speaking and listening.
I couldn't tell if there were more people on the screen that aren't showing up.
That's all right. Thank you very much all. Chad, you can move on to the next screen. And so, of course, we have Maryland State Arts Council has plenty of professional development opportunities throughout the year. You can follow MSAC's page for updates about free professional development opportunities. Some of those opportunities, of course, are financial management, legal advice, marketing strategy, strategic planning, board engagement, and so much more. We also convene quite frequently, and we convene in different ways. There's coffee with the council, creative conversations, regional art summits, next in the fall, and of course, Maryland Arts Summit. We can also propose topics by emailing us, and or if you just want to know what's going on, you can subscribe to our mailing list. Move on. We're always looking for panelists. Always looking for panelists. There's a lot of work to be done in that regard. MSAC relies on a diverse array of constituents from across the state of Maryland to do the important work of evaluating applications. There's a public call for each one of our programs. Schedule of calls can be found on our website. And if you're truly interested after reviewing those details, and you can apply through the Smart Simple platform. Training and support is provided by the MSAC staff. Roles include review and scoring of applications in connection to given rubric and required attendance at public panel meetings for some programs. Compensation, well, you can see the numbers below. You can move on, Jack.
Okay, thanks, David, for setting the groundwork for us today. Again, we're here for the Network Organizational Development Grant, which is a very unique grant, and to help folks who might be looking for application strategies. We'll start off with some introductions, and then we'll talk a bit about the purpose of this grant, which I'm no longer going to call Network Organizational Development, but instead NOD. Tell you about some of the past grantees and what they've used their funds for. Talk about our granting calendar for the upcoming fiscal year. Talk about how to make an application rather, and then take any questions at the end. But again, we're such a small group that just come off mute whenever you have a question or a comment, and we can address it as we go. I'm Chad Buderbaugh, Senior Program Director at the Arts Council. I direct the Maryland Traditions Program, which includes the Folklife Network, as well as the Special Request Grant Program. And I help out with arts and education. And I've been working with David in his early days.
All right, and I'm David Mitchell. I'm the new guy on the block. I'm the program director for County Arts Development and Arts and Entertainment Districts.
And I mean, since there are only 3 folks on the phone, do you want to say hello and talk about what organizations you're connected to?
Hi, I'm Tricia Sanborn. I work for the Arts Council of Anne Arundel County.
Hello.
And I'm Mary Ann Burke. I'm the director of the Washington County Arts Council, Western Maryland.
And I'm Julie Wood Merchant. I'm a licensed art therapist and an artist and a musician, and I am just retired from my full-time position and trying to figure out new ways to get involved in the arts and helping people.
That's great. Thanks for joining us, all 3 of you, especially to you, Julie. I think this will be a great way to kind of learn about some of the resources that are out there for independent artists. But most of our conversation today probably will dwell at the more organizational level. So yeah, let's dive in. Again, this is us. This is our contact information. We are your resources for this program. If your query is county arts or arts and entertainment focused, go to David, or if it's Folklife Network focused, come to me. The NOD grant is available to a select number of existing MSAC grantees. So it's not a public grant. I mean, it's a public grant, but not everybody can apply for it. Only organizations that are current A&E District management entities, county arts agencies, or regional folklife centers are eligible to apply for this grant. And to give you a sense of the numbers, we have 29 districts in the state, 24 county arts agencies, which is wildly impressive on a national scale. Very, very few states have a county arts agency in every one of their counties. And we also have 8 regional folklife centers supporting traditional arts across the state. So these programs operate kind of like they're networks, you know, they're doing very similar work to one another. And our role as the funder is not just to provide the annual grant to these organizations, but also to provide professional development resources and to encourage lateral connections among all of the districts, agencies, and centers so that we can really develop a strong arts infrastructure in Maryland. That's a big job. It's an extremely big job. So a few years ago, we realized that there was a need to increase the capacity of networks by providing funds that are beyond the scope of regular operations. And that led us to the NOD grant, which was instituted in fiscal 21 as a very small grant, frankly, of between $500 and $2,000, evaluated internally only and offered on a rolling basis. That funding we had some money in the budget that we felt like could be best used by increasing the funding maximum. So this year we're continuing with our current funding level of $2,000 to $10,000, but it is now connected to panel evaluation. So we're bringing in outside experts to look at all applications and make their recommendations. And we're breaking the awards down into three cycles throughout the year, where we're funding in October, January, and April. So this is taken directly from the guidelines. The intention of the NOD grant is to support organizational development activities that are beyond the scope of regular activities funded by A&E District operating support, county arts development grants, or folklife network grants. And we define organizational development as any effort that supports the stability, visibility, and effectiveness of an organization's. This broad definition means that organizational development looks different based on each organization's unique needs. And we want to highlight that last statement because we don't expect all NOD grants to be funding the same stuff. Instead, we expect each applicant to be telling us what's most important to them in their regions and what is in most need of extra support. So, for example, in fiscal 22, this program funded a strategic plan development process at the Howard County Arts Council. It funded digitization training for traditional artists at the Sandy Spring Museum Regional Folklife Center in Montgomery County. In other words, this was a series of free training for artists whose careers had been affected by the pandemic, and they needed to learn more about how to go online to monetize their work and make a living. So Sandy Spring responded to that need. And the NOD grant also funded a video marketing asset production project with Frostburg First, which is an arts and entertainment district in Allegheny County. And these would be videos that are not connected to specific programming, but instead were being developed as evergreen footage that could be used for many years into the future to raise the profile of the A&E district in Frostburg. And the reason I say that is that the NOD grant is intended to support that long-term type of organizational growth, not just the operating expenses that you're looking at in a given year. So here's our kind of abbreviated calendar. Grant applications are open now. Some of you may have started applications already. We're going to be releasing our call for panelists in about 2 weeks. You are all eligible panelists, actually. So if you'd like to serve on this panel this year, you're very welcome to apply. Round 1 applications are due in October. Applicants are notified of their status in November. And then that repeats for rounds 2 and 3. Second round due January 7th, notifications in February. Third and final round due April 7th with notifications in May. If at first you don't succeed, you may try again, meaning that you can apply twice for the same project if you're initially declined. The thinking there would be that once you receive a decline notification, you would get in direct touch with us, and we would help you improve your application and offer some specific strategies to make your proposal more compelling to the panel. The dates to remember are here. If you have specific staff members that handle grants administration with your organizations, make sure that they put these on their calendar. And make sure they read the guidelines. These are published currently at msac.org. They're not page turners, but they are absolutely crucial to getting familiar with the grant program and understanding fully what kinds of activities the NOD grant funds and what kinds of activities it doesn't fund. And again, this is kind of an esoteric grant program. It's not as simple as saying, it's not as simple as our GFO award that says we're funding your operating support, or our Independent Artist Award that's giving monetary awards for artistic accomplishment. The NOD grant, it lives in a very specific place that is meant to enhance the I guess, efficacy of your organizations in the long term. So do read the guidelines, and if you have questions afterward, get in touch and we can help you through. The NOD grant is so nuanced that we have included a screening call with each application as a kind of a prerequisite. So if you are interested, if your organization is interested, the first step would be to reach out to either David or myself, depending on which program you're associated with, to schedule a 30-minute meeting. And we can talk you through how to make your applications the most competitive. It's true across MSAC programs that applicants who reach out in advance to do this kind of work tend to be more successful. So this is only to your benefit to take this time. And then these meetings too, sometimes they take place with just one person on the applicant's end. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 or even 4 people on the applicant's end. That's all up to you. Again, county arts agencies and A&E districts go to David. Folklife Network inquiries come to me. Although probably still for the next few months, at least through round 1, probably, you'll see both of us on most calls. You apply in Smart Simple. That is here. This is our online grants management system for 100% of our grant making. And all NOD grants look like this, with these 4 headers. So your organizational information populates automatically. Your contact information you enter, and then under program details is where you describe your project. Financial information is actually budget information. This is not a situation where you're going to have to upload a P&L statement or an audit or anything like that. It's basically just letting us know how you plan to spend the funding. And the funding is per request. That range of $2,000 to $10,000 is per applicant request. If this application is taking you more than 2 to 3 hours to assemble, I'd encourage you to reach out to our staff to help you out, because these are not intended to be very onerous. Believe it or not, that's our planned content, and it's like 2:15 probably. So let's just open it up for conversation, or even if you wanted to talk about an idea and workshop it a little bit, we could do that. You just let us know how we can help.
Well, I can start if nobody else is jumping at the bit to do this. Does this have to be a new idea or a new program, or can it be something you've already started on and want to go to the next level on?
Yeah, it can absolutely be a program in process. For example, we know that many needs assessments are multi-step processes that might ultimately lead to a strategic plan or a change in agency policy. So if you just need a little bit of money to hire the consultant who's going to do the needs assessment, that's fine. Or if you just need a little bit of money to hire the printer who is going to make really glossy strategic plan printouts, you could use a NOD grant to support that.
Okay. You know, we're doing these diversity conversations for all of our grantees, and we're doing a big conference next month. but we want to keep this going and we don't really have the funding to go beyond August. Is that something that would work?
If, yes, if those conversations are, I would say you'd be most competitive if those conversations were facilitated by Arts Council of Anne Arundel County, and that the data taken from them are going to help your Arts Council improve its service.
Okay.
That's where you're going to be most competitive here. If the application is simply to help the Arts Council produce and facilitate a one-time conference, there are probably ways to make that application eligible, but I think that it would be less compelling than the first piece that I described.
Okay, that's very helpful. Thank you.
Sure thing.
They got it, Chad. They got it.
There's, I
That's
know, it
good.
feels so good. Yeah, like my inner teacher is glowing right now.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. It truly is about capacity building,
Mhm.
you know, at the end of the day. And I'm really excited to hear the various different ways folks are going to approach accessing and using this funding. Yeah, all of you are uniquely different.
Mhm, mhm.
Chad, could you tell us a little bit more about the three examples you gave us of the
Sure.
organizations that did apply? One of our greatest needs is staffing for increased hours. Once this supposed redevelopment of our downtown is going to happen in 24 with the construction of a multi-use stadium, not only for sports, local sports, but a professional team, and then concerts and things, all different kinds of things. It's going to be a 5,000 person facility. And the thought is that it's going to bring a lot of people to town, to the center of town, which has been needed for the 35 years I've lived here. But we have X number of employees and hours that we can be open. So that's one of the things we're looking at just to even start that. But I'm curious to see what the details of the three that you previously mentioned might be if
Sure. Well,
we have the time.
we absolutely do. And if you don't mind my starting in with the Washington County example, and specifically the Hagerstown example, Mary Ann, I would see in your description a clear outcome, right? Where there's going to be new development downtown that attracts more people to downtown to spend time, spend money, increase revenue, increase tourism opportunities. And then you have where you currently are, which is a county arts council with a really handsome shop storefront that is going to be part of that. It's there now, but it's also going to be part of this next level. So the gap that I see where a nod grant could potentially come in is to potentially hire a consultant to do a quick study, to be in touch with your civic leadership, to understand how your staff would need to change, increase, build capacity in order to sort of slide effortlessly into that expanded and more developed downtown. The nod grant could not just support straight up staffing because that's an operating expense, but it could help you strategize your staffing plan for the next few years. So just
And that's part of our strategic plan for this year also, but it's
great.
the resources, as you know, we get a little bit from our county, and we only get pass-through money from our city under $2,000 to give artists awards. They do not support our operation financially.
For Howard County, the grant is going to support a portion, I believe, of the total strategic planning process. They are using some of their own funds, as I recall, also to support that process. they are hiring a consultant. The Sandy Spring Museum hired an audio and video production expert to teach the staff how to teach the artists digitization strategies. So whoever this person was, they brought him in for, and I think it was a guy, for a few months to get the staff familiar with that process. And now the staff are offering that training in kind, or in kind to their constituency of traditional artists. And then the A&E piece in Frostburg, again, was about developing video content that was not connected to individual programming, which would be an operating expense, but which instead was connected to broadly raising the profile of Frostburg first, so that, especially in a part of the state where there's a little more space in between towns, and digital advertising might go a long way, like being able to put stuff online and reach somebody in more remote areas of the county. They're going to be able to use now those video assets to hopefully bring more people downtown. And that was a vendor that they had picked out, and they provided that vendor's expertise in their application, and it was ultimately successful.
Thank you.
Sure. These funds in prior years, prior to 22, have funded community-led cultural archiving projects. They have funded executive searches. So if you're ever in that position, you could use a nod grant. Any kind of board development, you name it. And then Julie, I think you're in a unique place to sort of think about what you might expect out of your local arts council or your local arts and entertainment district, and perhaps be in touch with them over what you feel would be of best service. And if they say, well, we don't know where to go for that kind of thing, you could direct them to this grant and let them know that the opportunity is out there.
Thank you. I'm mulling, because I know other, I'm interested in doing something to help people with the arts, but not necessarily, from a clinical perspective.
Right.
Of an art therapist. So, and I know other art therapists that, work with, in prisons, or work with people in recovery programs, like shelters for recovery, that get Arts Council grants for the work. And so, yeah, I'm just mulling at this point. Thank you, though.
Sure thing. Okay, now we're officially in our question section.
Why aren't more people on this call? That amazes me.
I think, Marianne, it's just a weird grant. The grants that are the most popular are the easiest ones to explain, like creativity grant, $4,000 to do anything with. And the nod grant is just so it's not complicated, like you can explain it, but it just takes more effort to explain and to understand. That's my idea. So please tell your colleagues, this is out there and available. We're always interested in hearing from folks who come to our webinars about whether they're useful, or whether the format's okay, or whether the tech is okay and easy to understand. We'll take any comments on that right now, if you have them.
I loved it that you explained how Zoom works. Because I remember early in the pandemic being on the first call that I was on, everybody was screaming at me, unmute, unmute, unmute. And I was like, what is an unmute? I had heard of turning on mics off and on, but I'd never heard of an unmute. So I appreciated that. And I have not seen very much of that. And I have since attended dozens and dozens of webinars. And I just think that's so enabling and welcoming. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thanks for saying that.
I think generally our numbers are going to pick up. I think folks are coming out of their summer slumber, and they'll actually engage, because majority of the conversations I've had, they lend themselves towards this type of funding, capacity building, strategic planning. It's we might have to do another one, Chad.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, anytime we could do another one of these if there's a lot of demand. And then if you feel like you've got team members or board members who would do well to hear about this stuff, just reach out to us and we could schedule a meeting and we can tailor this presentation to your agency.
And this is recorded that I can share it with our board.
It is recorded.
Thank you.
It'll be on YouTube with all luck by the end of the week. And I can make a note to reach out to you, Mary Ann, when that's
Well,
published.
I'm very interested in this. Our board wants to do, bring in a consultant that we used several years ago, and that we have followed the program somewhat. It was Honorban Basu, and we've gotten pricing to redo that study and update it, and there just wasn't the dollar. We raised all the money. The Arts Council raised all the funds when we did this initially. And there just isn't that kind of support right now, but we could probably get someone to match this grant and do
Yeah,
that.
great.
He's well respected up here.
Great.
So that's what I want to do.
If we can help make that happen, then we will do so. If we hang up and you have other thoughts, you can send them to this address, but you also know how to reach David and myself. If you don't, our addresses are at msac.org. And that's what we have for today. Unless there's anything else.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you both.
good to see you all. Talk
Thank
to you
you all.
later.
Talk to you soon.